Eduardo.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. I see a lot of people still joining. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get started in the next 30 seconds or so that we can end on time. My name is Joseph King. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Windwire. I'm going to help moderate the discussion today. Just so everybody ensures they're in the right place, the webinar that you've joined is entitled Responsible GenAI in Enterprise, Tools, Ethics, and Best Practices. I'd like to introduce our two speakers. Vineet Arora is a co-founder and he's the Chief Technology Officer at Windwire. And we also have Eduardo Kasner, who is the Chief Data Officer and General Manager for Software and Digital Platforms at Microsoft. 18 plus years at Microsoft and an advisory board member. So we're really excited for the discussion today. In terms of the agenda, we're going to start with Microsoft Responsible AI Principles, tools to implement responsible AI, and then we're going to wrap up with some best practices and recommendations. And we will have time for Q&A. In terms of Q&A, feel free to raise your questions either in the chat or in the QA itself. We'll be monitoring both. And we hope to have somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 or 15 minutes at the end to answer all of your questions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eduardo Kasner. Eduardo, you want to get us started?
You got it. My pleasure. So do you want me to take over the presentation or you will click as I tell you?
We can
Whatever
do either
works.
ways. Let's try if you are able to do that, Eduardo, and then it will be at your
I'm
speed.
not sure I can take over. So
Okay,
yeah,
your
no,
control.
I don't see how. So okay, so I'll just ask you. Yeah, I'll just ask you to continue. So welcome to everybody. Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be with Windwire on this conference call. This is a very, very, very hot topic nowadays, as you understand. One of the key things that have happened with AI is that since we have been working for, I would say, at least the last 14 years, pretty strongly into the AI space, we have invested significant amount of money, whether it be on Microsoft Research, or whether it be on creating the data centers and the chipsets. But we've been also obsessed with creating a set of artifacts, rules, guidelines, toolkits to understand ethics in AI, to understand how to build a responsible AI framework, to understand what tool sets and toolkits exist. And so as you can see, this started for us in 2016. When Satya wrote a Slate article, and then we established what's called the Ether Committee. And the Ether Committee was a committee to understand what are the principles that we need to create, what are the toolkits, what are the different technologies that we need to put, what boundaries do need to be established, what are the principles that we should be considering for having responsible AI journey. And so we did not start last year. This has been a very, very long journey of many, many years, where we not only understood that this was a very complicated topic because it implies legality, implies coalitions of companies, it implies how do you see the different principles and how do you define the principles, and how do other people agree on them or not, but also which scenarios should be the ones that you pursue and which ones should you not, right? And so as you can see here, there is a long journey that we have taken. If we can go to the next slide, please. So once you see all this opportunity, and again, I'm not trying to read the slide for you. I know you can read the slide as well. You can see that there are a lot of very interesting scenarios that we've seen that have taken over as soon as GenerativeAI got released. So with our partnership for OpenAI, I lead one of the teams that supports our high-tech customers. You can see that the darker blue boxes to the left are the ones that have gotten the most scenarios built. While we've built scenarios across every single one of the bullets on this slide, the massive amount of scenarios that we have built are more onto the left boxes. So either service and call center, we've seen tremendous amount of demand for it, whether it be for chat bots or call summarization or customer Q&A or sentiment analysis and call analytics, as well as for content generation. Marketing, customer, and business support would be a simple way to say anything that's a business application. So whether it be content generation or summarization or sentiment analysis or trending and forecasting or virtual assistants, you could very well put co-pilots into this box. So like I said, between those two scenarios, we've seen tremendous success, but also tremendous demand. And once you go into them, and I'll go into the next few in a second, you start asking yourself 5 questions. Once you go into adding generative, let's go back one slide. Don't go forward. You see, we start feeling a couple of pains. One is my data private? Can I make it compliant? What happens when I go multi-customer on the same platform, right? How do I make this into a multi-tenancy platform? How do I drive performance and SLA? Do I load balance? Do I do this across multiple data centers? Do I do this across multiple services? How do I drive a cost analysis? If this goes incredibly successful and it just blows up, what do I do? How do I manage it? But the most important question of all of them is, how do I keep it from hallucinating? How do I keep it from actually going off the rails and answering the wrong questions, right? Or giving the wrong answers and believing that it is correct and then reinforcing itself. And so all these questions start happening as soon as you start to add generative AI solutions, whether it be to your product, to your services, or using it internally. And those are the 3 value statements that I would say that we're seeing the most. Then it gets into, you want to use it for potentially generating code, whether it be code for querying a database, or whether it be code to use it as an interface, or whether it be code to generate a new application. And when you get into generating code, then you get into the question of, how do I review that the code has the right quality, that it has the right attributes, and that it has the right patterns in order for me to start promoting it into different stages all the way to production. And so that's also another interesting thing. And is it driving the right patterns of behavior? And then you get into code documentation or content generation and virtual assistants, or all the way to either legal document summarization or document search. By the way, on the second box, the one that says marketing, we see a lot of form recognition. So you see, there's a lot of scenarios here that we are seeing. My team has deployed about 180 production systems for generative AI for many of the companies that you know as well. And these scenarios all drive what would be, if you could go to the next slide, please, what would be the concerns that I just highlighted, right? So how do we maintain privacy for whether it be the company intellectual property or whether it be the customers' data or intellectual property? The second one is, how do I maintain security and compliance? What do you encrypt? How do you encrypt? Which compliance can you meet? Is the service a stateless service or a stateful service, right? Does it keep history or not? I'll give you an example. The GPT service is stateless. It doesn't keep anything. But the applications that you use, like ChatGPT or Bing Chat, etc., those are stateful. So those recognize you for your login and also may keep your history depending on your settings. But the service itself is stateless. It doesn't save anything. So then that's when you understand, okay, so how do I build the application around it? And do I build a stateful or a stateless application? Then you think about performance management, right? Which model should I use in order to conserve an SLA? Because again, if you ask a question and then it doesn't respond in a good, appropriate amount of time, service is useless. And then you get into cost management and reliability and accuracy, which I just talked. And reliability and accuracy is one of the most obsessive things that we've seen in the industry, because everybody wants to talk about whether it be about the RAG pattern or about fine tuning or about, but at the end of the day is the response accurate and correct? And so what we're seeing for people to start to address and build a scenario and try to learn into this and lean in is to define one scenario. Now, I didn't say 5, I didn't say 20. I said pick one scenario that is important, that is visible, one scenario that matters for your company. Do a hands-on lab, okay? Define the architecture, collaborate and push it all the way to production, make it launch all the way. And then go back to step 1 and repeat. Because once you do one that is important, you will learn the process of how to take it all the way through. Now, I haven't talked about responsible AI yet. I'm talking to you about general best practices that we've seen and which are the top concerns to go address. If we could go to the next slide, please. Basically, what's really important about the Microsoft ecosystem, and because Azure OpenAI runs on Azure, and all the other AI services run on Azure, the data is your data, and you have full capability of applying the same methods and control that any other Azure service has. So the data is stored encrypted in your subscription. We do not use your data to train underlying foundational models, putting it in the model catalog without your permission. So the Azure OpenAI service provision is in your subscription, and any fine-tuning stays with your subscription if you do any fine-tuning for one of the models that permits it. And the data is protected by the most comprehensive enterprise compliance and security controls. So we have encrypted and customer managed keys. As you know, we provide virtual private networks. We provide RBACs, as in role-based access control. And we already provide compliancy on SOC 2, ISO, HIPAA, CSTAR, and we're working with other compliancies. And this is more than most of the industry. So we are way ahead of this, and we intend to stay way ahead of this. If we go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So then, of course, you see here the Microsoft Responsible AI principles, and these are incredibly important. It is fairness, it is reliability and safety, it is privacy and security, it is inclusiveness, transparency, and accountability. And we have spent, like you saw there, close to 10 years thinking about all this. Because the question is, how would any of us want to be affected by an AI system that is not fair, or that does not provide privacy and security, or that it is not inclusive, or that it is not transparent? So having these principles and then providing, as you were going to see in a minute, the toolkits to actually go enact them doesn't just make a framework in a document that then you got to go interpret how to go implement it. We actually give you tools and guidance to actually how to make this tangible within your application, within your services. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So as you can see here on accountability, we're talking about impact assessment. We're talking about oversight of significant adverse impacts, fit for purpose, data governance and management, and human oversight and controls. For transparency, the three standards there is system intelligibility for decision making, communication to stakeholders, and disclosure of AI interactions. The last one being incredibly important. For fairness, we're talking about quality of service, allocation of resources and opportunities, minimizing and stereotyping, demeaning and erasing outputs. For reliability, we're talking about reliability and safety guidance, failures and recommendations, and ongoing monitoring and feedback and evaluation systems. And for privacy and security, we're talking about privacy standard compliance as well as security policy compliance. And for inclusiveness, we're talking about accessibility standard compliance. So there's a lot to unpack on this slide. And as you can see, it is incredibly comprehensive and well thought. So let's please go to the next slide. As you can see here, the anatomy of a responsible AI standard has to have principles, then goals, then requirements, and then tools and practices. So the principles, as you can see here, would be, just click through to animate the whole slide, please. So principles would be which enduring values guide the responsible AI work. And the goals are what are the outcomes that you need in order to enable to secure it. But when you're talking about requirements, it was what is the specific steps, whether it be on your solution, on the services, on the subscription, or on the outcomes. And which aids can we help to meet the requirement would be on the tools and practices. So you're going to see some of these today. Let's go to the next slide, please. So some of the harms that's happening with the generative AI is hallucination and errors and jailbreaking and prompt injection attacks, or harmful content in code and manipulation, human-like behavior. So those are things that we are actively seeing how we can support and how we can enable users to avoid and make better. So let's go to the next one, please. As you can see, we're going to go back, and this is the framework of the mitigation layers. First, you have your model, then you have the safety systems, then you have meta prompt and grounding, and last, the user experience, which is the one that you're building for your application. So going into the model, if we could go to the next click, please. As you can see, we have thousands of foundational models already available in our Azure AI Machine Learning Studio. There you go. Thank you. And it's okay. You don't have to, if it's a video or not, it doesn't matter. You can already see here we have the Hugging Face model. We have the Meta Llama models. We have the NVIDIA models. There's a lot of models that you can leverage and use here. This is all within AI ML Studio, and it is an incredibly rich ecosystem. So we're not just talking about the OpenAI models, and that is very important. You have a lot of options to use. If you are purposefully building and you require another model, example, Llama is really good with Chinese characters. There you go. So the animation just happened, at least on my side. So you can see here that you can use many models depending on the one that you would need for your application. And you can use the responsible AI standards and practices across all of them. So let's go to the next slide, please. Now let's talk about the safety systems. So next one, please. So for content safety, you want to detect and assign severity score to unsafe content. You want to work on human AI generated content, and you want to be available as a service API to integrate across the Azure AI systems. So let's go to the next slide so we can show what this is about. So we're going to go into a content safety demo, and for that, I'm going to pass it over.
Eduardo, thank you very much. Folks, again, thank you everyone for joining. As you heard Eduardo talk about various important topics for responsible AI, one of them is, of course, how do you implement some of those? At the content safety level, I'll just switch over to a demo for this, and then we will talk about what we would have seen out here. Some of you may have access to this already and may have used it. If not, what we want to talk about is that this is a service that has been released almost 6 months or so, and it has been available to customers to try testing your text, images, and even a multi-modal content, which is still in preview, for finding it out all those harmful aspects that could potentially happen when you're building solutions leveraging any of these kinds of technologies. I also want to go back to, I'll come back to that for a second. As you're building the OpenAI-based solutions and generative AI solutions, Azure OpenAI Studio is the primary platform where you do all of those. One of the features that has been added, which is very much related to the same content safety, is the concept of content filters. And I wanted to show you, you can actually create your own custom filters, customized filters. But I'll just show you what we have set it up out here is one of the filters. Now, as you will see out here, there are input level controls, and what the model completes, there are controls at that level also. There are four parameters on which severity levels are identified: low, medium, and high. Every organization, as you build solutions, will have different levels of needs on how much they can tolerate, how much they should allow to tolerate on any one of these particular parameters for the content that the user is asking, for the content that even model may produce output, because you want to have a solution that people can trust, people can rely on, and it is certainly not being abused in the manner. So what I will do is I will also show you how this is being used. This is just the environment where it is set up, but what this content filter configuration is used is ultimately when you're using one of the models. So in this particular case, I've deployed a bunch of models. I'm going to go to my GPT-4 32K model that has been deployed. And what you will see is there is an option to map to there are multiple content filters that you could create, and you could map to one of those content filter. What that does is basically any processing that happens using this particular model will go through an API call to back to this particular content filter and will apply those controls that have been set up out there. And how do you test that? Of course, if you have been using it, this is all built in that I could do that. I'm just going to pick up some text and test it out for you. And it could be something like as simple as this is a chatbot for, let's say, a shopping website, right? And I typed that I'm interested in buying a knife for using cutting the vegetables. Can you recommend where can I buy one, right? And it seems pretty straightforward. And when I type that, of course, the chatbot has been built and it provides all of those scenarios and what are the various options that you have available, right? That makes sense. The interesting part is if you saw the content filter was set up to medium severity for either self-harm or violence, right? The word knife is there, but that doesn't really, trigger those flags. But what I talk about, um, you know, something really bad, like cutting my hand, right? I will just change this from vegetable to that. And what the chatbot will do in this particular case, when you're trying, right, is it realizes that that is a problem and it's trying to help you through that. Now, what if I don't even want this kind of a response back to the user, right? Because you're not a journal website, you're probably a shopping website, right? So what we will do is we'll go back and look at this and say, I actually don't want I'm not going to accept anything related to self-harm or to violence. And I basically lower my threshold and I save that. And let's just make sure that it has been set up. Yeah, it has been set up. We'll go back to that. It's already mapped, so I don't need to do anything. I'll go back to the same chat that I've been having. And let me ask that question once again. And I'm sure if the demo gods are happy on me, what is going to happen is that now what you have done is essentially put in a filter to control, right, understanding of this kind of a text, and it recognizes that it is related to self-harm. And this response is, of course, standard. We work with customers when we build the actual solution to, fine tune it and make sure that it is whatever is the appropriate customers policies that you provided out here. But this is how you are able to restrict that at every level. And all this is possible, as I said, for the 4 parameters. And this technology, this tool is going to continue to be improved over time. Now, this is good for a very sort of a focused scenario that I talked about. What if you want to learn more about it? And as an organization, that's where the Content Safety Studio comes into the picture. The same topic that I talked about, you may want to actually build with a huge amount of data set. That's where this Content Safety Studio comes into the picture. You will see similar aspects that we talked about, right? So the last layer that was not there was safe, right? And low, medium, high was there. And these are the ones that Microsoft actually provides sample text, sample things that you can try. You can, of course, type your own. So I could choose, let's say in this particular case, a safe content, similar to what I was talking about it, and I run the test and it says it's accepted. But I again take the same thing and switch it off and run the test, and it will be rejected, right? Pretty straightforward and pretty simple, right? What if I actually do this? There is another option that all this is probably allowed, right? But I don't even want to use the words like knife. There's another concept called block lists, and I can actually assign a block list of keywords that you can understand, right, which are not appropriate for your business, which is not appropriate for whoever are your end users, be your customers, be your employees. You could actually do that. And now it's the same text. I've not changed anything. It's the same filter. Filter is saying I'm going to allow it, but it is going to get rejected because there is one word in that particular text that is there in the block list. So you see how some of these tools are providing you all the controls that you will need when you're building complex AI and Gen AI solutions to behind the scene, right, without writing much code, be able to control these. There are other aspects that I'll quickly cover where you could actually look at multiple risks. You could look at even multiple languages at one point in time. And that also will actually go through the same kind of a process and be able to understand it. Now, this is based upon hate and violence. There is no word called knife out there, but it is still rejected because hate and violence is right now at this level. There are some businesses which will be surprised, but if they may want to allow it, then it will still be unless and until it is absolutely allowed, right? It is not going to do that. You could also, the last thing I want to talk about is you could also test your model, right, with your data set. You could upload here. This is, of course, in a demo and in a testing environment. So up to 1,000 rows that you can bring in, you can upload your own file, and you could go through these models. Could go through this block list. And once you have done all of this, you could actually deploy it as an API. There are test environments available, right? It will show you these are the 20 safe contents, data sets. These are all for you to learn on how to use this particular tool and see what the experience is. The zeros and the ones, denote that are they allowed or are they meeting the criteria or not meeting the criteria. Most of the solutions that you will develop are global solutions. So you would also need to look at multiple languages, right? This is one data set that's available, which you could also create your own, where people may be, talking about different topics and different languages. All of it could be tested and evaluated out here. Hopefully, this gives you folks a little bit of a better idea on one of the critical tools. Let's just go back to the slide deck and quickly cover what you saw out there. We saw categories. There are 4 categories that are defined right now in the Azure AI Content Safety. It could be text that could be evaluated against those categories. Again, it could be a combination of those categories. And behind the scene, it is giving some kind of a severity level. And based upon that, it actually gives you the output to be rejected or accepted. Now, how do you handle it in your solution is something that you will have to think about it. You may want to give a different kind of a response. You may want to, redirect them to somewhere else. And the same thing happens on the images level, which I will probably just quickly show you in the same Content Safety Studio. You also have an image model. And in the image model, of course, these images are blurred. But we want to be respectful of your privacy and but you could actually test them out and you could unblur them for at your end. I'm not going to do that in the webinar, but this is accepted. If it's a self-harm content, you will see it is rejected. So it's not only text, it is also images that can be evaluated against that. And most of the solutions that you're going to build are going to be a combination of text and images, and those are the multimodal evaluations you will do. Just a quick representation of how you will actually implement it in your environment. You will have your application where there will be a prompt that will be sent to the Azure OpenAI Service Endpoint, which you would have implemented. Um, I see some of you have attended our previous webinars from Winwire, and I'm sure you have seen Microsoft presentation. How do you do that is not what we are covering out here, but that is certainly available in various other information. The content safety is an add-on that you're doing in terms of checking for those different 4 parameters. And also there is a reporting that is happening on abuse concern back to Microsoft, where there is, learning happening on if any of these things is going to be misused in. uh, there are scenarios based upon your business that even the default setting that is available from content safety may need to be changed. And the URL that you see out there, you could actually request, Microsoft for any exception for your solutions. I would see very rare needs for that based upon my experience, but certainly there could be some scenarios that could be there. So I'm just going to go through this quickly. We have talked about, and we have shown you this four scenarios, four categories, and then four severity levels within them that are being handled. And each of them is configurable. I already showed you these things. You can create multiple content filters, and for each model, you could use different content filters. You could switch it over based upon the context and where you are actually using this particular application. We'll certainly be taking any questions very soon as we complete this session. This is one of the critical and the most important tool that comes in as the part of the various GenAI solution that we are seeing customers are building, which are very chat oriented or text based and image based. I will move on to the next mitigation layer and talk about that a little bit and show you a little bit of a quick demo of this also. Now, to be honest, this one topic itself is both evolving in technology space. Microsoft has been investing quite a lot into the development experience for the Gen AI behind the scene. And this is a preview version that I'll show you, but we will certainly look at covering probably just this topic in a dedicated webinar in itself. That as you're building these solutions, GenAI solutions, you need to be able to implement different kinds of controls. The whole concept of prompt engineering, right? There are enough courses that I see out there, which I'm sure you folks have probably gone through it. What are the tools that are available for that, right? Machine learning prompt flow is one of those tools, which is again a studio-based experience. And for the developers on the call, you will see that it also integrates very, very well with Visual Studio Code. And you could do either in Visual Studio Code as a part of your larger development experience, or you could, of course, if you're a data scientist and a data engineer, stay in the machine learning studio environment. I'll spend a few seconds to show you what it looks like. But as I said, that's one topic that will require probably a lot more deep dive. But I do want to show you what are the capabilities that are getting released in the. I'm just going to go back. So this is a workspace that some of you who have been working in the machine learning space on the Azure environment must have been using. You can actually create multiple workspaces. I have this one workspace created, which has various options. Of course, this is not a webinar where we'll be able to cover all of them. The one that is more relevant to responsible AI and managing your security aspect is what I want to talk about. And I want to just show you this prompt flow experience, right? The point is that as a part of the entire processing of the information, right, from the user prompt that comes in to, we talked about the content filter will do its own job of processing the text of that prompt, but there are additional controls and mitigations that you will need to build based upon your business logic, based upon your needs around what is called meta prompts. You may want to provide some examples. You may want to provide some system prompts, right? This is one, just a small example that I want to show you. We have created a web classification model. We have used that. And essentially what this model is supposed to do is parse a particular URL, and prompt is going to be put in to say, what do I want to do with the content that is extracted from this URL, right? This is the experience that is very, very important, that people will need to get used to on how you can control. You will see basically you can actually visualize the entire flow of how this model is going to be processing that information. Second, you have inline code. So if you have been working with Jupyter notebooks and things, it's very similar to the same experience. And you will have different stages where the first stage of fetching the text control from the URL, right? Okay, that's fair enough. You're summarizing the text. Now, in summarizing the text, you are using, as you see out here, a particular OpenAI model. I'm using GPT-3.5 Turbo in this particular case. Now, for usage of this model, I do need to have a prompt. The prompt is, of course, going to be whatever the user is providing as a text. It's a variable, right? But this is the place where you could actually add a system prompt. This is where you could add your own instructions, right, and work with that. Not only that, there will be scenarios where you may want to have different prompts, different variations. In certain cases, instead of saying 100 words, you may want to have 300 words or 500 words, or maybe just 10 words in certain particular case. There is a capability to actually create multiple variants of these prompts so that in the flow, you can go through and choose the prompt based upon the condition. Maybe somebody is accessing it, let's say, on a mobile device. In that particular case, you may not want to give a complete paragraph of 100 words, you may want to give a smaller output. So those are the kind of criteria you could choose. And then, of course, ability to implement a complete example, which I'm sure if you have done any prompt engineering courses, LLMs always behave better if you provide examples. How do you provide that in this scenario? You are able to put in that entire code. In this particular case, it's saying if it's an app or if it's anything else, what is the example, what is the URL, and if this is the URL, what is extracted out of that. And the last but not the least is the actual classification using the LLM, which again is a GPT-3.5 Turbo call that is happening out here. So all this, as you see, is configurable. If you are more used to writing Python script and Zynga, you could actually look at that underlying. These are all basically files. Each one of them are a bunch of files that have been put into a particular folder. That's how the prompt flow is working. And in this case, I have this entire system prompt. User prompt has been created out here. It is going to be generated using many of these variables. It's going to go through examples. All of this is being consolidated. People have been doing, even a few months ago, most of this manually in code. Now you have an environment where you can actually not only code this, save this, but also actually run this and test it. And I'm just going to show you a quick run of this, which I've all set it up, all of it. But when we do a detailed webinar, we'll even show you how to set up runtime and how to set up all the various parameters and map onto the Azure OpenAI connection and everything else. But here in this particular case, we'll just show you if the output has happened using all these prompts, right? What the system is generating is something you can actually see as the output, and this is what the output. So these were the samples that were created, and I'm still seeing. Yeah. So
Well,
this is the
while you do that, let me
yes.
just add a couple of things I've been holding back. First, I don't know if you'll appreciate it, but it is awesome to have all these tool sets. It is rare that you have this amount of production enterprise grade level tool sets and tool stacks that you can leverage to implement the responsible AI framework versus just a guideline in a document and then you go do it however you think you could. The fact that you have not only the content management, but the prompt flow and the prompt engineering capabilities here to be very specific, to visualize it, to execute it, to test it, to batch run it. It is incredible. And it provides so much more maturity to your solutions and a capability for you to provide with compliance and meet the requirements of not only your teams and companies, content safety, but also provide a tangible framework for you to report on how you're addressing responsible AI. This makes it tangible. So I hope that you appreciate more than just slides. All these demos are showing you real tools that you can use today to make everything we said a reality. And it is incredibly powerful. and it drives a tremendous differentiation because all these are mature tools. And we went to production, all of us, including OpenAI, what, a year ago? So it is very impressive that all these tools are not only out there, but that they're at this level of maturity and that you can leverage them. So please take advantage of them. Sorry, let me pass it back to you, Vinit.
No, absolutely, Eduardo. That is a very, very critical and important point. And that's why we saw the need from various other conversations that we have been having, this topic itself, and how do you actually implement these solutions rather than hard coding and hand coding everything. These tools are the ones that you absolutely talked about, and Microsoft is leading the way in providing you these tools. As I said, we'll be happy to cover a dedicated topic just on the meta prompt. I want to touch upon just briefly, the other aspects, and I'm sure as the progress happens, there will be more tools mitigation layer at your end is also the user experience. What Microsoft also has is a set of tools, again, combined under what is called the Human AI Interaction Toolkit, and that has guidelines, design library, workbook, a lot of things that people could actually use while they are doing the development. I'll probably like to show you one of them in the user experience, which is, I think, a very, very relevant tool that you could actually use right away, is what is called the Human Interaction Tool Playbook instead of the entire toolkit. And what that does is basically helps you provide guidance when you're building the user interface for such kind of GenAI solutions, right? What are the things that you should be careful about, right? These are based on years of experience, years of research that has been done. So let's say if you're building a conversational AI, it's going to guide you through a process. Is it text-based or speech-based, right? If it's text-based, will your conversational AI have a clear way of knowing when it should be triggered? You say yes. What you will see is there is this guidance that is being built for you on what, as a development team, as even business analysts, as even some senior executives who are building, who are responsible to make sure that your GenAI solutions are going to be more reliable and trustworthy, look for these kinds of areas like spelling errors, right? That is there, right? I could actually say no to this particular case. In that particular case, it'll say, look at some other delimitation errors. Maybe there will be truncation. And I have experienced this myself as team was building this, is maybe the output is going to get truncated and it's not going to be a good experience for the users, right? You can actually go yourself and experience this. These are tools that are available, as I said, for you to experiment and play around and understand and work on all the four mitigation layers that we just talked about to help build responsible AI solutions. And hopefully these tools and these guidance are going to be helping you over time. I want to just wrap it up with and provide Eduardo also an opportunity to provide his perspective. If I see the sort of the entire sort of the sequence of how you will look at it, right? There's content moderation available. There are inbuilt quality and safety measurement that we talked about in the models that are there, right? Even if you don't implement content moderation, right? All the underlying platform is still providing you a lot of controls. Then we talked about prompt engineering, which you have a lot of control about. And then, of course, you should continue to use those same tools. There are monitoring tools to see are there still things that are maybe falling through the crack, unfortunately. How do you repair them and then go back and then try this entire process as such. I'm going to leave it on this one slide where we talked about best practices. You have seen various guidance, various principles that Microsoft has, various tools that enable that. What are the best practices that you should be, as the executives, all the way to the developers, thinking about when you're developing responsible AI solutions? All the principles that you heard from Microsoft, very, very critical and important. Otherwise, what we have seen in certain cases is, of course, the customer's trustworthiness on your solutions, the customer's relationship, even your employee relationship in certain cases could be negatively impacted if you do not give importance to many of these topics, including inclusiveness and transparency and everything else. Eduardo, I would like to give you an opportunity to say anything in summary, but hopefully this has been a good information for everyone to understand what are the best practices and the tools that are available for you to build responsible AI solutions.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I think you've said it really well. I would just add, um, when you first start riding a bike, you don't necessarily think of all the how to keep safe on the road, right? You're just thinking about how to handle it. And so I think that a lot of generative AI solutions are going through that maturity of, first it was like, what is the scenario? Then how do I build it? Then, okay, so how does this operate? Is this accurate? Is it responding with high reliability on the answer that I want? And then all of a sudden, oops, I gotta find out how to make it compliant. I gotta find out how to make it secure. Then all of a sudden you're hit by this. How do I make it responsible? How do I make it ethical? And it is quite complex. And so we are super happy to provide these level of not only documents, guidelines that have been thought for a decade and that have been matured, but also this amount of integration of tools and maturity of tools so that you can actually make a tangible report on it and be compliant. So there's a lot to unpack on the content that we have presented to you. And we hope that this not only makes you and empowers you to not only try the technology, but actually build incredible solutions for your users and for your internal and external stakeholders. But the important thing is, let's make it so that we build a future that is compliant, that's ethical, that's secure, that is fair, that is transparent, that is accountable, that is inclusive, that is reliable, and let's make sure that we do it with responsibility. And so, thank you for the time that you spent with us. I think we have a couple of questions. Danielle's had the hand up for quite a while, so I don't know how you want to handle questions, but
Yeah,
really
thanks,
appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks, Eduardo and Vinny. Great conversation. Danielle, if you still have a question, if you can raise it in chat, Q&A, that would be great, and we'll get to it in a second. While we wait for a couple questions to be added to the chat or to the Q&A, just some housekeeping. If you or your organization want to kind of double click on any of this discussion today, please email marketing@winwire. I personally monitor that on a regular basis, and as appropriate, I will get Vineet and Eduardo to reply to any of the questions that you may have. This is I think the fourth webinar series that we're doing around GenAI with Microsoft. The previous webinars are on demand at winwire.com, so please check those out. The next topic, which hasn't been decided yet, but we're leaning in the direction of doing something around meta prompt and grounding. Look for that. We'll be announcing the date and time for that. But if anybody has any recommendations on what we should cover next, again, would love to hear your thoughts and perspectives. So send those to marketing@winwire.com. All right, with the housekeeping out of the way, we still have a few minutes left. Let's try to get to some of the questions. Danielle, you still have a question? We're looking for it. If you can type it in, that would be great. While we wait for the question to be added, I'll get maybe the conversation started. How can we? Oh, we do have a question now. Hi, these are incredibly subjective terms. What is hateful? As an example, how are these scores determined, and are these models open source? Thank you, Danielle.
So what you are seeing, what you saw in content safety, there is of course a very complex set of research that has gone behind over many years of work that Microsoft research team has done. I agree that on the first impression, all of these could be at a subjective to a certain level. But there are keywords, there are phrases, there are learnings that these models have done to make sure that they capture a lot of it. I wouldn't be able to assign a percentage to it. I don't think there is one published out there. At this point in time, to my knowledge, unless Eduardo, you have a different knowledge about that, these evaluations using the content safety are not open source. That's what Microsoft is building. But you could actually use it in any scenario because they are all API based. And the Content Safety Studio actually provides you that environment where that subjectivity could be minimized to the maximum level for your business use case. You could try different kinds of text, different kinds of images to figure it out if the model is still failing in certain particular case. And that would be certainly a feedback that could be provided to the content safety team that could continue to improve that particular model. Hopefully that helps. We'll certainly be happy to connect later and separately and have somebody from Microsoft Research provide you some more information on that. Unless Eduardo, you want to add anything to that.
No, that was fair. There's a project, Danielle, that if you want to look at it, it's a search in Bing or Google, your search engine of preference, the term photo DNA as one single word. It's a project that we started about 10 years ago. It is together with Dartmouth College, and it is to prevent child exploitation images on the net. And it's a project that started us on how do you understand what are the levels and of inappropriate images, and how do you manage them, and how do you identify them, and how do you do this in a way that's compliant and automatic, and then how do you report it to to the right legal agencies of it, the countries that this is in, et cetera. And then how do you remove them from the net? Why do I say that? Because that was one of the projects, one of the many research projects that we've been working on for 10 years that have led us to actually been able to create qualifying frameworks for what are some of these terms, which I agree with you at the surface, like Vineet said, appropriately, are very subjective. But when you look at the research and the work that we've been doing for many years, there's actually a lot of research, a lot of work done on how to create these frameworks. And so if you go into the content safety system, you are going to see that there's a lot of thought, there's a lot of actual good research into some of these categorizations, and there's a method to all this. So I would highly recommend that before going deeper, try the content safety system and take it out for a spin and read some of the documentation. You're going to find a lot of really interesting stuff there, and there's going to be a lot of you're going to benefit from the many years of hard work that we have implemented into that. Milan, if you, yeah, exactly, which is exactly that. Same GitHub and etc. It would be prompt flow. It would be the tool that Vineet showcased, which would be prompt flow, where you would see different methods to not only manage your prompt but also manage injection, etc. There's different methods there. Of course, there's things coming up every single day on that. There's good patterns that we have published, which are already on GitHub, on how to manage and try to prevent injection attacks, etc.
Absolutely. Thank you, Eduardo. And follow-up question from Daniel was around white paper. There are lots of research papers that Eduardo talked about. If I just, sorry, switch back to the slide for a second, you will see the RAI tools has all of that research, all of the information tools. Of course, there's a lot to review out there. We tried to compile the key important topics into the webinar as much as we can. We'll be happy to do a follow-up. But even if you are on the Content Safety Studio portal, as I was talking about, you have documentation available, you have a lot more research available where you can understand how these things work. And of course, try it out, experiment with it. If you have Azure subscription and OpenAI, you will need to create a resource called the content safety resource, and then of course be able to experiment with whatever I showed you out here. A related question that I see from Kumar is around the monitoring tools. There are several monitoring tools that are available. There are monitoring of online activities that is built into the content safety portal itself. We may not have a time to do a full-fledged demo of that, but that's one. And then the other one is the monitoring that is available in the machine learning studio itself. What you will see, this one, both of them are actually in preview. I don't have in this particular demo environment anything set up, but this will be again another monitoring environment for your models on how they're behaving, what kind of a failure levels are happening. Those are some of the areas where you could experiment with the models.
More importantly, more than just asking the question, try it out. I think a lot of your questions are going to get answered if you try it out, if you play with it for a bit.
Exactly.
It's going to be incredibly powerful. There's a lot of stuff here that is incredibly new, but the very important message that I'm trying to land with all of you is we've been working on this for a very long time. The partnership with OpenAI did not just happen because we invested in OpenAI. It happened because we had a lot of research, a lot of technology, and we had the GPUs that we could run together to train the models. But more importantly, we had an impressive amount of research and collaboration where we shared. So the generative AI is one aspect, but we had a lot done already on AI in general, which then enables and creates all this practical the way you're seeing it.
I think we have time to maybe answer one more question that's been raised by Kumar. You want to take a shot at this, Vineet?
Right, Shravan, your the way I understand your question is about scenarios where such kind of GenAI solutions are being deployed into the edge-centric environments. And at a high level, what I'll tell you is that these are all controls and tools and all the safeguards and the guardrails, as we call them, governance, monitoring, that is being put at the core level, right? Wherever the models are going to be executed or used, right? There are, of course, there's a lot of computing power required, but there are some scenarios on some models that will be deployable in an edge scenarios. They will still be able to use all of these things because these are all API-based mechanisms. These do not need to be deployed into the edge environment, right? But they will need to use API calls to be able to use the same features and functionalities as required. Hopefully that gives you an answer. I probably may have not understood your question correctly or entirely. We'll be happy to do a follow-up to understand what scenario you're talking about and how can we implement that.
Again, reach us at marketing@winwire, and we'll try to keep the conversation going. One last question that's been raised, so maybe let's try to quickly answer this in a minute or less. Is there the ability to integrate with Azure Sentinel or another SEIM?
So I think as some of you may or may not be aware of the Azure Sentinel as a platform, which is more on the entire cloud management layer at the infrastructure layer. I'm sure Microsoft may have something I'm not aware of directly. What tools that we showed you, what aspects that we are talking about are right now built into the machine learning and the AI tools and technologies that are available. At least I'm not right now aware of anything that is looking at being integrated with Sentinel. But if we do find out something, we can have a look at that, check with Microsoft team and provide you some inputs.
Yeah, there's a lot coming in that sense. There is a lot of integration happening. So absolutely hang tight on that. And there's good stuff that we already have and good stuff on the way. That's another presentation by itself, how we all integrate with the security framework of Microsoft. And there's a lot of good stuff there that I would highly recommend you take a look in that we already have in the platform. So yes. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate not only the questions, but the interaction. And we hope that this was very practical and useful, not just theoretical and aspirational. For us, responsible AI is a very important topic that we want to make tangible and executable in your solutions today. So really appreciate you attending this webinar and participating.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry, Vineet. We'll make the recording available in the next 24 hours or so and send it out. But again, any follow-up marketing@winwire, which was just put into the chat, we monitor that. We'll love to continue the conversation.
And we'll want to thank Eduardo for your time and for your insights. Microsoft, of course, is the leading edge of responsible AI, not only responsible AI, the overall AI platform. And hopefully, all the attendees got a lot of good inputs. We are one of the strong partners with Microsoft who will be available to help you as you're envisioning to deploy these solutions. Please reach out and we'll be happy to help you. Thanks, everyone, for your time. Eduardo, thanks for the partnership and thanks for your time too, sir.
No, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Have a great day, everyone. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.